welcome back to Style with Substance, and welcome to a video all about relationships. I titled it Relationship Goals because it seems to be quite the trending topic right now, along with life goals, body goals, fitness goals, all sorts of other goals. But I'm glad that we are now becoming a generation of goal seekers. I wanted to talk a little bit about what my view is on realistic relationship goals to set yourself so that you can progress in your relationships, whether that's romantic, friendships, or with family, in a realistic way. I think a lot of the time we idolize and we wish for things that we see in the world around us on social media, on TV, and a lot of the time it's not as realistic to when we apply it to ourselves. So here's my way of setting yourself some realistic relationship goals so you can maintain and have more healthy relationships. If you like the sound of that, then please keep watching. Now I'm going to relate a lot of these examples to romantic relationships just because I think that often these, probably along with family relationships, are some of the hardest to maintain. The first relationship goal, which I think is a realistic one, and I think one of the most important ones, is communication. I cannot stress the importance of talking and always being open and honest with your partner, friend, or family member. I think a lot of problems are created when people aren't clear about what's going on in their mind, what's on their heart, or how they're feeling, and often communication, whether that's verbal or non-verbal, although verbal is probably better because you can be as clear as day, people are not very clear as to what they're feeling. I think communication can often be the start of a lot of problems, which is quite ironic because one, the lack of communication means that each party doesn't really know what the other party is thinking or what they're kind of going through. And over communicating, where you're kind of hammering in a point and you kind of lose effect on what you're saying. So I think it's about finding the right balance of communication. So whether that is saying something once and saying it in a really appropriate environment, perhaps where it's just a one-on-one conversation, is a really good way to communicate. And then you kind of don't have to hammer the point home and you don't have to like nag and nag and nag. The second relationship goal, and there's only 3, is to listen. Communication is a two-way street, and when someone is communicating with you, you've got to be listening. And listening isn't just hearing what the other person is saying, but it's also trying to understand it and put yourself in their shoes. Now, I pride myself in trying to be a good listener and trying to take on board the things that my other half says to me, but I know it's not as easy a skill for other people to pick up. For example, I'm not the biggest talker, but I'm a great listener, and it might be vice versa for you or for somebody else who you're in a relationship with. But you have to really make an active effort to listen to people, because it's not just listening to words, it's understanding what that person is trying to say to you, and sometimes trying to understand what they're saying even though they're not saying it, so almost reading between the lines. The third relationship goal, which is quite a controversial one, I'm going to say, is forgiveness. And when I think about long-standing relationships, I think about people who have been together for years, who have families, kids, or just a really strong bond. I look at my parents, for example, I look at my other half's parents, and I see years and years and years of not necessarily always good times or happy or joyful times, but generally I get the impression, and for a lot of it I've witnessed, people go through good times and bad times. And unfortunately, in bad times and in times of turmoil, forgiveness does come into play, because you really have to have a heart of forgiveness to kind of take on board a lot of the things that we do to each other as humans. None of us are perfect. None of us make no mistakes, unfortunately. Even I make mistakes. And I think it's so important to recognise that people are human, and that they can only do so much, and that they can only change so much, and that they can only be so much. So I think in relationships, forgiveness is next to none. Now, everybody will naturally have a different boundary or a different barrier or levels in terms of what they can forgive. But honestly speaking, I think that you just have to know yourself, and you have to know what you can tolerate and what you can't tolerate, and what you can forgive and what you can forget. And there is a difference between forgiving and forgetting, as much as people kind of sometimes lump it into the same category. I think that you can forgive someone and not forget, And in my opinion, yes, you've forgiven them, but you've kind of not really moved on from what they've done. So as much as you'll never totally forget something, or you can't remove certain things from your memory, perhaps particularly if it's quite a traumatic experience, I think you can definitely learn to move on from it and focus on other things. And focus is a key word here, because when your mind is focused on the positives, you tend to not think about or forget the negatives. So forgiveness and forgetting, if you can, is really important. That I think no relationship is perfect, and I think we should never look at a couple or people and think, oh my gosh, they have the perfect relationship, they must never argue. Because we all argue, some more often than others. We fall out with each other, we, rub each other up the wrong way, we annoy each other, like, it happens. And you don't always see that when you're scrolling through an Instagram feed, or when you're watching Snapchat videos, or when you're watching YouTubers talk about how they met. You're not going to see them necessarily always talking about, in the mornings when the other person's really annoyed them, or when they've gone to sleep without sort of speaking to each other, or when they had a really big fight about some family matters. People aren't going to put their bad times out there as much, unfortunately. Well, fortunately, to be honest, because you don't probably want to see that. So you should always bear in mind that if you see something that looks perfect on the surface, it's not really perfect. It's just as human as you are, and it's just as normal as you are, but it's just packaged up in a different way. So I hope you guys have enjoyed my relationship goals. I think those are 3 realistic relationship goals you can set yourself to improve your friendships, your relationships with family members, and your relationships in terms of a romantic sense. If you've enjoyed that video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more lifestyle type videos or relationship videos. I post 1 video a week on a Sunday, sometimes a bonus video on a Wednesday as well. And I hope you come back for the next one. Bye!